Yeah, really welcome to IIASA from my side. I think many of you now already are familiar with my office. I saw you passing by when I was talking on the phone, so now we have a chance to also meet each other. Yeah, so happy to say a few words about Advancing Systems Analysis program at IIASA. And of course, we are advancing something. We are advancing systems analysis. So what is systems analysis, in fact? So many people are asking. Many people have their own definitions. So it's this famous story goes that one of our previous directors asked staff, actually, how do we understand systems analysis? And there was a diversity of definitions. So if you ask Google, then it thinks that it's something like this, yeah. And after so many years of doing systems analysis, actually, so that is kind of my version. So that systems analysis consists of 3 pillars. In the first pillar, we are addressing global challenges that involve multiple geographies and sectors. And by doing that, we can focus on revealing trade-offs, or also finding ways how to reduce trade-offs, and revealing and finding ways how to maximize synergies across geographies, sectors, and so on. So that's one pillar of systems analysis. The other pillar would be analyzing systems that enable interconnections. Networks, for example, yeah, trade networks, transportation networks, social networks, and so on. So by doing that, we can develop insights on what kind of structures, so what kind of patterns of that interconnection can actually facilitate desired outcomes. And what are those desired outcomes? Can be many, but for example, resilience of systems. Yeah, so which structures make systems more or less resilient? Or which structures facilitate collective action? So which structures, which patterns of interconnections actually help different entities work together? That's a second pillar of systems analysis, in my view. And the third pillar here, in no order of importance, of course, is the pillar where we look at shared patterns across systems of different nature. Yeah, so you find similar phenomena in natural systems, for example, and you find them also in economic systems, yeah, such as innovation, mimicking of successful behavior, and so on and so on. So by doing that, by focusing on such shared patterns, we could actually facilitate transfer between different domains and between different disciplines of concepts, methods, and insights. So we learn something about one type of systems, and with some appropriate adjustments, we can actually transfer that to different types of systems and learn something by or through such transfer. So that would be for me a third pillar of systems analysis. And of course, system analysis very much involves mathematical computer modeling, as most of you are surely doing, and increasingly also works in partnerships with stakeholders. So now if we come to advancing, so we are obviously advancing those 3 pillars and specific approaches to or in those pillars, or to dealing with those pillars, in particular by revealing, finding, harnessing new sources of data and methods to convert data into knowledge, by developing novel modeling approaches and underlying theories enabled by increased computational capabilities. That, of course, is very important these days. Engage transdisciplinary research and developing new approaches how to actually do it. Then again, innovations through transfer of methods that I mentioned already across disciplines, experimentation with new analytical methods, and expansion of systems boundaries. So bringing systems that previously were considered in isolation, bringing them together, connecting them, and then seeing what happens. Yeah. And of course, the ultimate goal is to increase realism, relevance, and agility of systems analysis to make it really useful for the challenges of the 21st century. IIASA program is organized into 4 groups, and here you can see their names. And if I go quickly through those groups, the nodes group deals with data aspects mainly, so striving to harness the potential of big data combined with citizen science and machine learning. And indeed, so the word cloud here attempts to show some keywords that characterize what nodes group mainly works on. Land use, you see here, machine learning, Earth observation, remote sensing, citizen science, and so on. EM group, exploratory modeling group, focuses on the development of integrative models of different complexity, and this different complexity is key here, to better understand complex feedbacks in human natural systems. And again, here you can see some keywords, I don't read them, but you see the diversity of different types of models that these guys are working on. Systemic Risk and Resilience Group focuses on management of systemic, anthropogenic, and environmental risks, where systemic risks arise from interconnections of different systems and propagating different, let's say, threats or hazards throughout those systems, again, in multiple systems, but you can see of course, climate risks are obviously one important type of risk, but also others. So you can see in these keywords here. And last but not least, the CAT group, Cooperation and Transformative Governance Group, aims to analyze governance systems addressing sustainability at different scales, with the aim to come up with cooperative solutions and actually see how those cooperative solutions can in fact be implemented in practice. And again, with a range of modeling and other types of analytical approaches, we are working on those kind of topics here in this group. Thank you for your attention. And of course, if you are interested in our research, please feel free to reach out either to myself or to any colleagues that work in ASA. So IIASA spirit is really very much so that we like to discuss things very informally in a kind of bottom-up manner. So if any of you has any interest, just reach out, say, let's go for lunch or let's have a chat. And many new ideas and many new projects, in fact, emerged through such kind of really bottom-up initiatives and just, some discussions, and then sometimes it, as I say, develops into something really new and exciting. So feel free and don't hesitate to do that. And again, thanks for listening and good luck with today's event. All the best and see you later.
My name is Piero Visconti. I am representing the program today. Peter Avelix sends his regards and asked me to represent the program instead. Which direction it to?
No, I think it's because I probably clicked this most recent.
Okay, I'll just use that. Yeah.
But try it now.
Let's see if it works. Yeah, it does. So we are probably the largest program at IIASA. Over 90 people based here and 60 research guest researchers around the world. I want to summarize what we do with the motto, that informal motto of the program, which is happy people in a happy planet. This is, I guess, really epitomized in the kind of research and policy support that we do. And that has got to do with essentially land systems from a biophysical perspective, ecological perspective, water management, as well as economic perspectives. And I'm going to describe briefly each of the 4 groups. The first is the Agriculture, Forestry, and Ecosystem Services group at PNR, which is the powerhouse for everything that's got to do with the biophysical modeling of forest management, agriculture, as well as disturbances for them, especially fire. And these are some of the key research topics that AFE is busy with, some of which the YSSP students we are hosting this year will be moving forward. First one has got to do with sustainable cropping systems, as in having mechanistic models that try to work out what is the productivity and also the feedback on the carbon cycle, for example, and nutrient cycles of different kind of crop systems around the world, and how these can tackle multiple societal challenges, feeding people as well as, for example, maintaining functioning ecosystems and addressing climate change. On this topic also, the group is developing mechanistic models of forest structure and function that inform also management analysis. And these are being coupled with mechanistic models, for instance, of fires. And all of these has been, for example, used to look at natural climate solutions. For example, one of the flagship project of the group is Restore Plus in Indonesia, where the group has been working together with local stakeholders to identify restoration pathways to address both nature and people needs. The next group is the water security group, which is essentially addressing one overarching objective, which is to provide scientific evidence and support on managing water from various perspectives. So there are 4 dimensions of water security that the group is dealing with that are illustrated in this diagram here. And the kind of work that is doing is tackling each of them. From one side is the integrated assessment, economic modeling of water management to look at explore trade-off and address this with synergies, water management for producing food, feed, as well as addressing ecosystem services. Using these models then to explore different pathways, also simulating different policy scenarios. And also perhaps this is the group that is more keenly and deeply addressing the issue of governance regimes within BNR, also using participatory scenarios to investigate with stakeholders what are the needs and how can scenario models help them addressing them. Then there is a group that I lead, Biodiversity, Ecology and Conservation. We are the kind of center within the BNR program that deals with understanding natural ecosystems, pattern and processes, ecological processes, and using these theoretical understanding to develop models and spatial plans that address restoration and conservation needs. So there's an element of fundamental research, but also a lot of element of applied research dealing with biodiversity conservation. And finally, there is a IBF, Integrated Biosphere Futures, that is led by Peter Avelik, that kind of brings this all together from a kind of integrated assessment modeling perspective. They are developing integrated assessment economic models that bring in all this biophysical information that the other groups are gathering to investigate this, like the core of this motto, happy people in a happy planet, in a sense of understanding really trade-off across multiple societal needs and providing optimal solution. And for example, this is basically leading to a whole program endeavor, which is an ecosystem of tools that are dynamically talking to each other, investigating what are the production function, what are the kind of biophysical potential for producing food, timber, fiber, and so on, understanding what are the limitations for this production from water and from ecological systems, and then bringing this all together with mixed economic models to look at whether we can actually achieve all these things together or what are the kind of weak links, so to speak. And these are the kind of research questions that can be provided with such a framework. For example, this work led by Tomoko Asagawa in Peter's group was investigating how can we go about feeding everyone in a fair way. We could, of course, just produce more food for everyone, but that would affect negatively key planetary boundaries, for example, for greenhouse gas emissions and for nitrogen use. Or we could do it in a more sustainable way by addressing issues of overconsumption, addressing issues of waste and so on. And in this way, we can also reduce forest loss and nitrogen use. And of course, many of the YSSP students will present a similar example to this on how these BNR tools can address these coupled challenges. And with this, last slide, of course, I was saying that we are also quite busy with policy support. I was nearly forgetting that we have indeed provided lots of evidence base, for example, for the CBD Global Biodiversity Framework, which has extensively cited some of our work, and I'm strongly convinced actually that the goal A of the CBD Global Biodiversity Framework was actually particularly influenced by some of our work, but also, for instance, the impact assessment of the biofuel and aviation industry policy was actually done with our models. just to give a flavor of it's not science in a vacuum, but it's really science lent to decision support.
I would give you a brief overview of the EC program, so Energy, Climate and Environment program. Our group is relatively large, and we have basically 5 subgroups: the pollution management group, the sustainable services systems group, integrated assessment and climate change group, transformative institutional and social solutions group, and integrated climate impacts group. But also within these groups, we have the so-called cross-cutting themes, as you can see here, as well, with the representative on the right side. So, and the idea is also that within these cross-cutting themes, we work across the groups. As maybe I'll want to really go through them. As you can see, these are also topics that are kind of span different areas or require quite a lot of kind of integration from different disciplines. So this is why we have this also cross-cutting themes. And overall, objective is really to ease and facilitate integration of different themes, of different disciplines, kind of within our group, because we also have many projects that are very, very disciplinary. And the first group, the Pollution Busters group. So here, as the name suggests, the main focus is on especially also a lot of policy support and work related to air pollution, but also non-CO2 greenhouse gases, and also how does this impact human and ecosystem health and co-benefits. So within this group, you probably also hear lots of work or presentations around Gaines model that you know. Then within the S3 group, so here the main focus is around behavior and lifestyle changes and energy services. So within this group, we focus a lot kind of on understanding demand side changes or the implications of demand side changes on climate mitigation. So here there's also really lots of interesting empirical work, but also modeling work. Here we also have our more sectoral or more granular models, so that I think you will probably also get some insights from the other YSSP presentations. But here, for example, we also have like an own transport model and building model. So this is more sectoral focus and understanding really how through changing behavior and lifestyle we can maybe reduce the overall kind of final energy demand and how it can make the overall climate mitigation a bit easier. Then we have the core modeling group, so YAC, and here a lot of work is also is around expanding and improving the core model, so Message IX. So here, one of the new kind of core activities is also thinking about climate impact integration, because this was criticized a lot, that in the kind of standard global integrated assessment models, the climate impacts are not considered directly, so you don't really have a good representation of the cost of no mitigation, right? So you have a good understanding of mitigation cost, but not so much of the cost of doing nothing. Also looking then more related into vulnerability and adaptive capacity, and here also one of kind of the current innovations is trying to go a bit more beyond the cost only perspective. And related to the previous group, also the core activity is the so-called cross-scale integration, so where we also try to integrate the global model also with other higher resolution models. But here we're also working a lot on development of national versions of Message IX models. So there's lots of capacity building in this area, but also to think about how can this be applied maybe to subnational levels, and also which new methods and tools can we use for downscaling of the results from the global model, because especially for policy relevance, it's important to have more granular results. And another core kind of innovation within this group is also, our focus is this energy and materials focus. So we also have now a more detailed material model, which enables us also to understand, for example, the material implications of mitigation or different mitigation strategies. So which is also, again, quite important in the overall kind of perspective, where we try to integrate the different streams. And finally, also lots of work is around data hosting and creating databases, thinking also of visualization tools that are more accessible to different stakeholders, so not only just to modelers, but to broader public. And so here, lots of activities around also make scenario data more accessible, and also thinking of better visualizations. Then within the TIS group, we are trying then to add more the perspectives from social sciences. And here we are focusing on social, institutional, governance, technological, and economic factors. And here also the questions of developmental concerns are important. So here lots of conceptual work is happening. Sort of, for example, the projects that we have related to justice considerations are happening around this group, but also around well-being. Yeah, and here we are really trying to kind of bring in some conceptual insights from other disciplines, do some also empirical work, and then also think about how can we link this to scenario work or modeling work, or how can we develop also new tools to create the linkages. So, and again, the big kind of conceptual areas that we are focusing here is also technological, social, and policy innovations that help also improve well-being, so how to measure well-being, but also how to understand better the impacts of different climate mitigation strategies on different justice considerations. Yeah, so here kind of lots of big topics, big concepts. And then finally also the impact groups. So here the core is understanding of biophysical and economic climate impacts and risks, with a focus on extreme events, climate overshoot. So as I will show you in a bit, this is a big topic at the moment. Tipping elements, and also again this coming back to the work of group, also this enhanced integration with other groups, and also advancing frameworks for climate resilient development pathways, and also development of new methods, emulators for integrated assessment of impacts, adaptation, and mitigation. So again, the linkage also to the global integrated assessment models that focus on mitigation. And also finally, there's also lots of interdisciplinary research that tries to link emissions to climate damages, questions of climate attribution. And this again links to the work of this group that works a lot around justice. So you can see this is all quite interlinked. And as I mentioned, we are also having upcoming overshoot conference. So here you can see also the topics that are covered. And so please, if you are interested, apply with an abstract for this conference. And additionally, I think there was, okay. Now there is, I also wanted to advertise IMC meeting as well, and that there is an early bird registration, and that if you submitted an abstract for IMC meeting, you should also register relatively soon, but I guess that slide is somehow missing. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, and yeah.
Welcome to IIASA from our side, the Economic Frontiers Program. Excited to see you. Wonderful kind of agenda you brought with you sort of collectively in terms of the projects you're doing. Many actually with an interesting economic angle. So let me say straight away, in case you're looking for some conversation with economists, have questions, queries, whatever, would like to get feedback, I mean, free really to contact us anytime. So what are we about as a program? To some extent, you could say it's actually trying to get that signpost thing correct and fixed, where you see everything pointing in different directions. And you could also go as far as that economists had their fair share in causing the mess we're in. So it's probably only fair we're getting involved in trying to resolve it, hopefully with a view to making things better. But here's one which, since I've come to IIASA, which is about 4.5 years ago, I kept having debates with Fabian and others as to what is system science. I've learned a lot. Maybe I haven't quite understood it yet, but one thought that was striking me is that whereas, of course, the economy is one subsystem amongst others, and economists are sometimes blamed for not really looking beyond their little subsystem, but actually you can take the economy as a system with many subsystems in its own right, but you can go even a bit beyond, and that to some extent is depicting the purpose of why we're here. So I'm calling economics a behavioral system science. So without going through this complex thing in its own right, really it's a lot about decision making. So people are making choices for better or worse, and these choices depend on their preferences, they depend on the information, also their rationality. They depend importantly on incentives they are getting through policies and prices, as well as on their constraints, technology, budget, whatever. And these choices then lead to outcomes at the individual level, and these feed back into their utility or welfare or well-being, whatever you want to call it. So this is a sort of decision, not subsystem, a decision system, if you wish. Then, of course, this system, which is in a sense at the individual level, is interacting, which is the economic system, which is a complex system in its own right, creating where individual choices are essentially feeding into macro outcomes, which feed back into the individual outcomes, as well as the expectations, for instance. So what we are trying to do, not the only thing we're trying to do, but some sort of focus and particular emphasis at the program is we try to work with this very explicitly by analyzing the decision making, coming up with decision rules, which could be relatively complex, really try to understand them rather than assume them, and to understand the economic valuations which are driving these systems. And why is this important? It's important to understand really, at the end of the day, how policies will work. Because policies are aiming at changing individual choices and behaviors. So to understand this, we would say is important. Okay, what are our research themes, if you wish? Well, to understand the behavioral changes in the first place, which are important to achieve the social and environmental transformations. Also, understand how things go wrong due to wrong behavioral choices. Then understand the policies and sort of institutional reforms that are needed to bring about the required incentives towards achieving these changes. But then also in an integrated way, understand what all of this implies for the well-being across social strata, geographical scales and time. And broadly speaking, we look at these questions in kind of the intersection some way or other between fairness or distribution, resilience to disruptive changes, sustainability, how does the whole thing develop, is it sustainable, and governance, of course, which is permeating everything. So this is really the policy angle to this. We have a certain focus on these two aspects, not ignoring the others. So what do we do in one part of the program? It's called Economics of Equal Life Chances. There we try to understand the processes behind inequality, but in a relatively focused and close-up way. So we look at individual life cycles, individuals making their choice over their lives, subject to all the constraints, incentives they have. in particular with the view of how do they accumulate human capital, and that's health and education. And how does that then translate into economic outcomes, and how is this, of course, also dependent on the economic standing? All of this leads to some well-being measure. And the question is, of course, we will find inequality in this, and then we ask, well, how can policies mitigate this? And this is not just within a certain birth cohort or generation, but it's also across generations. Projects, quite a few by now, so we have looked, this is almost finished, at the unequal impacts of medical change, medical progress, and income growth on life expectancy in the US. We are currently working on a big European project which looks at how lifestyle changes are kind of triggered and related to certain net zero and even very unconventional net zero policy. So the EU is asking us to test things like degrowth, quite a surprise for us, but very interesting to look at. And ultimately to understand what these policies actually mean for the well-being of these generations within different European countries. A similar thing is focusing on Austria. There it's slightly narrow focus, so we look at the impact of energy policies on household decision-making and outcomes. We have a regional welfare perspective, so there we focus out a little bit away from the individual, but on a regional level to understand the impacts of the carbon transition. And finally, let me highlight actually that our YSSP projects nicely tie in. So Hadi, he will tell you more about his project, and it's on finance, but there's an important angle in this, which is on the impacts of financing schemes on inequality. So here we go. The other one is economics of disruptive changes. There it's deriving these decision rules and valuations in very complex systems, in particular systems which are subject to the risk of very large regime-changing shocks, and that's climate tipping, ecosystem breakdown, pandemic shocks, disruptive technological change, you name it. We've been applying this to COVID in the past, but we're now looking at climate and social tipping events, flood risks at the household level. We also try to use the modeling to derive actually measures and metrics, for instance, on resilience. And finally, we find Guo Liang with this project here, which is on termination shocks in geoengineering, which is precisely fitting our thinking. Finally, let me invite you, for those who are interested in further engagement, we have a sort of irregular seminar series going on, but we're planning 1 or 2 events at least while you're here over the summer. So this is essentially an economics seminar, but one which is very low-key, very easygoing. So feel free, actually, if you're interested in presenting your work to a larger audience, feel free to get in touch, but also feel free to get in touch if you just like to join the group. And that invitation clearly stretches to after your YSSP time here. So I think we have a few former YSSPs who still attend the seminar, which is typically hybrid or virtual. Thanks so much.
Hello and good afternoon. Really nice to meet you all. So as Brian said, my name is Jo Borghi and I lead the Social Cohesion, Health and Wellbeing Group in the PopJust programme. So unfortunately, our programme director, Angu Jean, couldn't be here today, but I'm going to do my best to give you a little bit of an overview and brief introduction to our programme.
Or thing to get rid of this so that you can have the full screen.
So, two. So PopJust really focuses its work on the human and social dimension of things. A lot of the work is empirical, analysing data, generating new methods. And it's really, ultimately, I guess what we're aspiring to is coming up with system solutions for the future, for the world to be sustainable, resilient, and equitable. So this is the vision pyramid for PopJust. And at its core, you can see we're really interested in how future societies can function. And related to that, there are a number of different areas that we're looking into, obviously exploring the demographic transition and beyond, as well as what impact climate change is having on health systems and migration behavior. And at the top, a big focus of the work is on inequalities and how we can solve them. So we have 4 groups. There's the equity and justice group, which is really focused around, trying to propagate the concepts of equity and justice in our research. We have the migration and sustainable development research group, which is quantifying and studying migration flows. The multidimensional modeling group, where future populations are modelled at different scales. And then there's the social cohesion, health and wellbeing group that I lead, where we look at measurement of wellbeing, of health, but we also study health and health systems and the impact of climate on these. So I'll start by just giving you, for each group, just a quick example of some of the work that we do to hopefully give you a little flavour of things. And I'm going to start with SURE, with the group that I am part of. And these are examples of 2 projects that are currently ongoing. So we have the CHIAS project, which is led by Daniela Weber, which is really trying to understand the drivers of cognitive functioning among older adults, and particularly the role of individual characteristics, as well as social roles, caregiving roles, family roles, work roles, and country level kind of welfare system factors, and how these all interplay to affect cognitive health as we get older. This is a study in Europe, across countries in Europe. And then the other example is the REACH project that I'm involved in. So this is work in Brazil and Zambia, where we are trying to understand the impact of floods and extreme heat on the health sector. So how it affects the delivery of healthcare and access to healthcare in those 2 countries. So moving on now to the ECU, Equity and Justice Research Group, which is, as you can see, quite a big group. It's fairly recently established in 2021 with the explicit goal of developing a justice framework, a conceptual and analytical framework that would be used to streamline the research across YSSP on justice. And it was quite a process that started back in 2021 and last year sort of culminated. There were lots of workshops engaging with people across YSSP and also stakeholders outside of YSSP. And there's been a number of publications that have resulted from this, including a YSSP working paper that you might be interested to look at. And it's a really nice interdisciplinary framework that can be used in research. Another example of the work is around the identification of policies, governance arrangements, and financing arrangements that either support or impede nature-based solutions. There's a number of different European Union projects that have supported work in this area, and ECU is now really established as a leader on this. So moving now to the migration group, which you can see to the right. And sorry, I forgot to mention the research group leads. So ECU is Thomas Schinko, and here the migration group is led by Roman Hoffman. And these are some examples of the work that the group are doing. So one big aspect is kind of collating and generating novel data sets along with new estimation methods for migration. So they've quantified international migration flows by subpopulation group. They've also used census data to understand and measure internal migration. There's a lot of work around migration modeling, so understanding the drivers of migration, be they climate related, conflict related, and increasingly they're looking not just at the drivers of migration and mobility, but also immobility. So what factors, stop people from migrating after a disaster? And then the third dimension is around the migration forecasting and modeling into the future. So our last group is the multidimensional demographic modeling group, which is led by Anne Goujon. And just two quick examples of work within this group. Obviously, the very well-renowned global population projections that project by age, by sex, by education across 200 countries, following also the shared socioeconomic pathways. And that those projections can be accessed through the Wittgenstein website. The link is below. And here you can also see an example of a research project, Sparkle, that PopJust's colleagues are part of, where they're sort of exploring populations in a changing climate and particularly looking at the multidimensional aspects of socioeconomic vulnerabilities in the population. And that's focused in Europe. So I think I will end there, but really good to meet you and look forward to hearing the PopJust presentations next.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Strategic Initiatives program. So the program itself is actually relatively new at IIASA. It's 5 years old. Well, I can talk about it, that's old, but it was basically set up as a response to some needs expressed by the NMOs, national member organizations and regional member organizations of IIASA. They wanted to shape IIASA's research more directly and have a stronger say in IIASA's research. And then the leadership at IIASA at that time, 5 years ago, decided to set up this program, which I'm heading. The idea had many objectives. So the objectives of the strategic initiatives are to also foster cross-program, cross-group collaboration within IIASA. Want to do interdisciplinary, cutting-edge research, but also to really work directly with the national member organization on topic setting, on specific research topics which are actual, which are important, which are currently to be tackled, and where specific NMOs have some interest in those. So there were different kind of cycles we did in terms of engaging the NMOs. We've run, I think by now, about 8-9 workshops with the NMOs where we asked the NMOs about their needs, about their interests, but also we continuously reviewed the program itself because it was new. It was really important to us to get feedback from the NMOs on how they see the strategic initiatives program to develop. And of course, to some degree, because strategic initiatives also works very closely with them, with the NMOs, there is also some type of science diplomacy kind of component to it. And, just to repeat, the strongest impact IIASA could have in terms of science diplomacy. So I quote our director, if there was a president in the US and in Russia now, and both of them had been YSSPs like you, we probably wouldn't have this problem now, right? So to simplify many things, but remember when you are president, remember IIASA and remember to talk to each other, to the other person who might be a president in another country. So anyway, to come back to the strategic initiative, we then basically issued calls. So we also had this component to be competitive. So IIASA researchers, specifically young researchers, women researchers, could come up with a proposal, which was then evaluated through an evaluation committee. So we called it also a little bit as mini European research grant. So I don't know if you're familiar with the European kind of grant structure, but it's really a very prestigious grant, which young people get, and also older. There is also something for older people called advanced grant. We set it a bit up that way also with respect to the evaluation criteria, but also we placed high emphasis on the link to the NMO countries. And based on that, we had 6 strategic initiatives evolving. Here is a summary of what I just said. Also external co-funding was another objective, that is kind of a seed funding where then this project initially funded, this initiative could continue in the future. These 6 projects, which have been running and 4 are still running, are called Resist, Trust, Bloom, Fire and Ice, and the 2 which were concluded in 24 were called Fair Stream and Just Transitions for All. So these which have now concluded, they had a very strong focus on just transitions, on justice on different levels, but also using the justice framework within the integrated modeling framework of IIASA. Fair Stream more on a regional level. In India, there were some tests, to have a fair distribution of resources within the Burma Basin, for example. Then Fire and Ice and Bloom are 2 new projects now where there is a focus on fires in boreal forests and the impact of air pollution on health. Bloom is kind of related very much to COVID. So zoonotic diseases are how they can transmit, with some case studies in Congo using Ebola as an example. So also very interesting and kind of cross-cutting with respect to interest of countries. So these last 2, they were really voted for. So we changed also the procedure a bit in terms of letting the NMOs vote on what their priority would be, where they got access to just an abstract. And based on that, we also selected them. But there was still the top 4 then still got into the review, where then the top 2 were selected for carrying it further. And the ones which will conclude quite soon, end of this year, are Resist and Trust. So Trust is about examining how also some tools from IIASA, in particular public engagement, citizen engagement in science, in sustainability science, as done at IIASA, system science, can build a trust as such, and trust in particular in the work we do. And Resist is about the impact of potentially also at how crops and how plants can adapt to changing environments and changing climates. It's quite an innovative tool called based on the plant fate model, which you might have seen somewhere. There are some publications, but that's ongoing. But again, each of these projects has had a very strong connection to countries in our NMO countries. But we reviewed it as said, so we did a questionnaire with the NMOs and asked them, what do you think could be improved? And the responses varied a lot. So some NMOs were fully happy. They said, go ahead, it's great. And others said, no, we want to be more involved. It's not enough. We want to have a stronger say. We want to shape more the research you're doing. We want to have stronger hubs within the countries, and we want to have national institutions involved directly in the research. So this year we were pausing, and we are then now thinking how we should continue. So this is an ongoing reflection we are currently doing. We will set up new engagements with the NMOs, whatever the name will be, but it's very clear for IIASA that we have to, in one way or another, very closely engage with NMOs. And the current model we are thinking of, at least for some NMOs, that we can potentially have even co-leads within NMO countries and jointly develop a project with the IIASA researchers. So there is even a stronger direct link to the NMO countries. And with that, I think my last minute is finished. So thank you.